Boom, boom, boom. Hey, it's good to see everybody. Thanks for coming out tonight, as Rodney said. And before I jump into what we're going to talk about, I can't come to Canopy without saying thank you to the hundreds of you who serve at all of our Atlanta area churches. And if you're not a part of any of our churches, that's okay. Canopy's for the whole city, but there's a group of you who show up at Buckhead Church and North Point and Woodstock and Southside. Some of you from Southside. Southside folks here tonight, I know. Peachtree City or Noonan or Henry County. It's amazing. It's really amazing. And Brownsbridge and Gwinnett Church. So thank you for serving our children. Thanks for taking care of middle school and high school and serving in the living room and hosting. And we could not do our churches without you. So I'm super, super grateful. I'm giving you a one-person hand. Yeah. So tonight, we're talking about the rules for the road, basically the rules for navigating life successfully. So I'm gonna tell you all the secrets of navigating life successfully. No, I don't think so, but I'm gonna share some of them with you as I have figured these out. And the truth is, as we know, life is complicated. All of us have lived long enough to know that life is complicated, but that always takes us by surprise because it just doesn't seem like life should be so complicated, right? I mean, I figure, based on what we heard earlier, if you can make it to the beach and back safely, it seems like you should be able to navigate life. In fact, as we're gonna discover, there are a lot of parallels between taking a trip to the beach and coming back and navigating life. It is complicated, but it just shouldn't be so complicated. And of course, sometimes we make it more complicated than it should be. And as I was preparing for our time together, I thought of a story that is absolutely true, even though you're gonna think I'm making this up. But I have a friend who has two younger brothers. And speaking of the beach, so his youngest brother, there's three boys, the youngest of the three, when he graduated from high school, got some of his buddies together and they did their, senior trip to Daytona, dude. And so anyway, they made their way down to Daytona, and a week later, all the friends came back and he just stayed for a year. He went to Daytona with his senior friend, the guy just graduated, and he stayed in Daytona, no lie, for a year. And for weeks and weeks and weeks, his family never heard from him. And they're calling the friends, like, yeah, he just decided to stay. And weeks went by, and months went by, he finally contacted his family. And no surprise here, guess what was involved in his decision to stay? A girl. The girl said that, yes. So I'm not being criticized, yes. There was a girl in the story, surprise of all surprises. So he started writing, and not writing probably, but calling, talking about this girl, and they had a nickname for her that I'm not gonna share with you. Anyway, it was the family had a nickname for her. Anyway, and he wouldn't come home from the beach because he's kind of living the life. So a year goes by, a little more than a year goes by, and he lets them know, I'm coming home and I'm bringing her with me and we're getting married. I know. And so he shows up, okay? So this is the part you're gonna think I'm making up. So my buddy and the middle son, because there's three boys, the middle boy, my friend who's the oldest, and the daughter, I have a daughter, they're all at home, and so he shows up. And anyway, so now you got the younger brother and the older brother. And I know that when I practiced telling the story, I thought this kind of sounds like one of Jesus' parables, doesn't it? Like except when Jesus told a parable, he made up a story in order to make a point. This is a true story that has no point, okay? So this is the difference between this story and one of Jesus' parables. So, no lie. So he gets there with the girl and they walk in, and lo and behold, his girlfriend, fiance, recognizes his brother, the middle one. Because 2 years earlier, the middle son had graduated from high school. I told you you're gonna think I'm making this up. And he also went to Daytona Beach and met said girl, but he came back without her. So they make eye contact there in this house over in South Atlanta, and the younger brother's like, so excited, and the girl and the middle brother are just like, hey, it's nice to meet you too, again. Anyway, so they decide not to tell the younger brother. Yeah, this is gonna be a secret, right? For how long? That's how long, not very, okay? So sure enough, the younger brother marries this girl who had the nickname with the family, and it did not, I'm not gonna tell you the end, it's terrible. It did not end well. Okay, so the point is, it is important to know the rules for the road and to obey the rules for the road, lest you have a bad ending to your story. So real quick, what I want to do, absolute truth. There's actually more to the story. Can't share it with you. But anyway, you could just fill in some of the blanks. Anyway, so what I want to do for a few minutes is I want to give you these 4 rules for the road, okay? And 3 of them are really common sense. So if during these first 3 you're kind of like, I got a slushie for this? This is early, okay. So, but they're common sense, but sometimes it's so important for somebody to remind us of common sense because here's what you know. You've lived long enough to know this. Common sense, it's not always that common, is it? Yeah, because you have seen some friends make some really silly decisions, bad decisions that kind of undermine their own success, and you're thinking, why would you do that? I mean, it was just common sense. But when it's us, it just doesn't seem common. Looking in the mirror, we miss the obvious sometimes. So first 3 are kind of common sense. So rule number 1, rules for the road. Number 1 is this: don't travel alone. Life is better connected. Life is better with friends. And the reason I wanted to start with this is because 80% of you totally get this. 20% of you, if the statistics are correct, you have a tendency to isolate yourself from other people. And you listen to this voice in your head that says, I don't need anybody. I don't need anybody. I'm enough. And not only do you listen to that voice in your head, you have a soundtrack to go along with it. You like music, you do. You like music and you like the lyrics and music that just underscore and just emphasize you don't need anybody, you can do this on your own, okay? So I'm a little bit older than most of you, so trust me, you can't. You can't. You were not made to do life alone. Don't travel alone and try so hard. Don't isolate yourself, especially when things aren't going well. Don't isolate yourself. Don't listen to that voice. And when it comes to not traveling alone, here's something we should have learned in high school, but most of us didn't. When it comes to the people that you're doing life with, don't just gravitate toward acceptance. Don't just gravitate toward acceptance. Now, we don't think about choosing friends or picking friends because that's kind of weird. Like, how would you actually pick a friend? I mean, would you like interview them? No, would you? No. So what happens, what happens, we don't really choose our friends or choose who we do life with sometimes. We just gravitate toward the group that accepts us first. And if you're new to this city or you're new to this community, of course, your natural inclination, like mine would be, is to gravitate toward the people who are who have open arms, because again, most of us don't want to be isolated. So the trick to this is don't be content to do life with people who just like the music you like and don't just like the restaurants you like and don't just watch the shows you like and don't just watch the movies you like. Find people who not only share your taste in music and food, find people who share your values. Because at the end of the day, and this is something we've all learned the hard way, but we never outgrow this principle. Our friends, the people that we're doing life with, the people we're journeying with, our friends really do determine the direction and the quality of our lives. Your friends, the people that you're doing life with right now, whether you just gravitated toward acceptance, you gravitated toward them because you started a new job and that's kind of your friend base, the people that you do life with, the people that I do life with, they determine the direction and the quality of our lives. And we think, no. I choose my own direction. You just look back on your own history like I would. The friends, the people, the world that you move in relationally determines, and sometimes it over-determines what you thought you determined for yourself, determines the direction and the quality of your life. And one more thing on this, and I'll move on to number 2. Surround yourself with people who are taking care of themselves. And here's why this is important. This is just a principle. People who are taking care of themselves will be more inclined to take care of yourself. And people who don't take care of themselves will be less inclined to watch out and to take care of yourself. Illustration. Imagine a friend of yours who had a car, and it was a pretty nice car until they drove it for 6 months or a year, and they just trashed it. I mean, every time you got in there, it was kind of like, can I levitate? Do I have to, you know what I mean? You have friends, and you're thinking, oh no, don't look at my car. Okay, you can tell a lot about a person by what's in or not in their car. Just saying, okay? Okay, so anyway, so imagine that you have a friend and their car, when they got the car, they were so proud of it, and then it just slowly, over time, it just gets trashed. There's dings, there's dents, there's, stuff missing. They don't seem to get it fixed. And then their car is in the shop, and you're like, yeah, really? And then they say to you, can I borrow your car? And as nice as you are, you're trying to figure this out, and the only thing you can think about is their car. And you realize, you know what? They don't take care of their car. I bet they're not gonna take care of mine. So here's sort of the moral of the story. I don't really have a verse for this. Again, this is common sense that's not so common when it's us. If you wouldn't loan someone your car who doesn't take care of their car, don't loan yourself to somebody who's not taking care of their body. And don't loan yourself to someone who's not taking care of themselves, okay? So don't do life alone. Don't isolate yourself. Don't just gravitate toward acceptance. Find the people who share your values and find a way. And that's why a community like this and that's why a gathering like this is so extremely important. Because when you get swept up and when I get swept up in people who are moving the direction in life that we want to go, it's so much easier to continue to move in that direction. And oftentimes, again, the first group of people that we interact with in a new job, in a new city, in a new community, in a new neighborhood, in a new club, whatever it might be, a new gym, that first group of people, we're always gonna have something in common with them. But to wait and to allow that inner circle to be the people that are moving in the direction you're moving in, this is how you finish the journey. Well, it's just a principle. Rule number 2 for the road, and don't judge me too harshly for this one, but don't pick up strangers, okay? I mean, haven't you heard this your whole life? First, when we were little kids, it was don't what to strangers, don't, yeah. And then it was don't take what from strangers? Yeah, and then you got a car and it's like, don't put any strangers in your car. And the problem with all those rules, I mean, it's good advice, is that no one ever defines stranger for us. It's like we're just supposed to know what a stranger is. And you're thinking, well, if a stranger is just somebody I don't know, I'm never gonna get to know anybody. So I thought, since we're all adults, that I would define stranger, okay? Because this is a big deal. A stranger is just someone who's strange. That's what a stranger is. So don't pick up people who are strange. Now there's a problem with this, and the problem with this is, just to be honest, you're a little bit strange, right? And I'm a little bit strange. So I brought in the definition, okay? Because this really is an important point, okay? So I changed it to this. A stranger is someone who is stranger than you. How about that, okay? Wherever you are on the strange meter, they're just a little bit stranger than you. Now, this is really a really important principle. And if you know, I'm a pastor, and to hear me say this is gonna sound not very Jesus-like or Christ-like, but there really is something super important. And I'll tell you a quick story. My mom, she passed away 5 years ago, and my mom and I'm more like my mom than I am my dad. At least that's what people who, in fact, one time we did this weird thing where our organization had a women's conference. And it was just all women speakers, women everything, women band, you know? And so me and some guys dressed up like women to sneak in. Many years ago, one of the guys had a mustache he would not shave, so it was very strange. So we went in this dressing room and we had this lady help us, and we all dressed up like little old ladies. And so I got, you know, a whole thing on and a hat and a little net thing, you know, the nets with the hat, you know, whatever. And I turned and I looked in the mirror and I said, Mom, I look just like my mom as a little old lady. Anyway, I don't know why I shared that. So my mom was very outgoing and very friendly. And so we lived in Miami for a long time, and she would travel to North Carolina to visit her mom and dad and her sisters. And then we moved to Atlanta, and she would travel and fly. And whenever she would come home from these trips, she would talk about the people she met on the plane. And it drove my dad crazy. And my mom was a very attractive woman, so I don't know if that was it, but it would just drive my dad crazy. And he would say to her, Annie, her name was Anna, he called her Annie. He'd say, Annie, don't talk to strangers. You shouldn't talk to strangers on the plane. And she would say, well, once I got to know them, they weren't strangers anymore. Once I got to know them, they weren't strangers anymore. Then when I was a sophomore in college, I was home, and my mom came home from one of these trips. And I said, how was the trip? And I remember my sister was standing there, and we said, how was your trip? And she said, well, I love this. She said, well, I finally met a stranger. Because she was sitting on the plane, she was sitting next to this guy, he'd had a couple drinks, and he's just too much. He's just too much. And she said, I finally met a stranger, and I just shut down the conversation. Now, what was her point? Her point is this: the point isn't not to be friendly. The point is to be careful. Be kind to everyone, whether you're a Christian or not. Just be kind to everyone. But be careful who you allow in your car, and be careful, come on. Just be wise about who you allow in your inner circle. And here's why. Because the healthier you are, you know this, the healthier you are, the more helpful you can be. And when you and I allow the wrong influences in our life, again, you think, Andy, are you talking to middle schoolers? No, this is true for all of us our whole lives. When we allow unhealthy people in the inner circle, not that we can't have unhealthy friends. I mean, all of us have unhealthy relatives. I mean, there's just no way to avoid all unhealthy people or strange people, whatever word you want to use. Be kind to everyone, serve everyone, but be cautious. The rule for the road is, you can hand money out the window, but you just don't invite everybody into the car. The healthier you are, come on, you know this, the healthier you are, the financial healthier you are, the physically healthier you are, the mentally and the healthier you are, ultimately, the more helpful you can be. So just be careful who you allow into that inner circle. So let me ask you this question, and we'll go to number 3. Do you have any strangers in your life? Do you have any strangers in your life? Is there anybody in your life, and if you're honest, they're making you less healthy? That you used to, perform at this level. Now, you used to be on time for everything. Now you're kind of late. You used to go to bed early. Now you're staying up. You used to eat right. You used to have really high moral values, and now they're starting to slip. Do you have any strangers in your life? Do you have anybody in your life, ladies? Let me just address you, ladies. Are there any guys in your life, and because of your relationship with them, you're beginning to doubt yourself? He's a stranger. He's a stranger. Ladies, you need to stop, open the door, and invite him out of your car. You need to close the door and, give him $5 or buy his donuts or whatever's going on, but just don't let him drive around in the car with you, okay? Because he's a stranger. He's causing you to doubt yourself. Guys, there may be a stranger in your life that's a friend, or it may be somebody you're dating, or it may be somebody who's dating you, and then you woke up and you were dating them. You ever have that happen? It's like, oh no, I think we're dating. When did it start? I don't know. I think she started before I do, but now we're dating. I don't know how that happened. Just maybe. And again, you think, Andy, are you being critical? Yes. Okay. I'm not being critical. Here's the thing. Everybody is somebody that God loves, and everybody is someone we should care for. But the healthier you are, and the more you take care of yourself, you're in a better position to take care of other people. And I've just seen so many times post-college, you drop into a city, you start a new job, and your friends group is gone, and you're not in the city you grew up with, and your high school friends, you've kind of moved on from them, fortunately, and your college friends, they've moved on. And so suddenly you find yourself just gravitating toward the people who are most accepting, which is absolutely natural. And then one day you realize, who are these people in my life? They're nothing like me. And then they want to, you thought about inviting them home. One of my sons, I won't tell you who, this was such a cool thing. He was in college, and he was dating, and he had just broken up with a girl, and so we were talking one day, and here's what he said. He said, Mom and Dad, he said, honestly, he mentioned this girl he was dating. He said, I kept thinking about bringing her home and introducing her to y'all. And he said, I kept thinking, if I brought her here, I would be afraid to leave her in the room with the two of you, because I just felt like I would have to be with her the whole time. I'm like, well, that's a good sign right there that maybe, right? See, it's not that we don't love people. It's not that people don't matter. It's just you kind of know. And I just want to give you permission if you had any doubts about it. There are times in all of our lives, in every season of life, because we're taking care of ourselves so we can take better care of other people, that you just got to get out of the car and just, gently. It's always awkward. Nobody goes, oh, I understand completely. No, it's always awkward. Nobody's like, I actually agree. I'm a stranger and I shouldn't be in your life. It never goes like that. It is always awkward, but there are times you just have to invite some people out of your life, so that maybe in a different season of life, you could be there for them, but in a different capacity. So don't pick up strangers. Number 3, choose a destination and then borrow a map. Choose a destination and borrow a map. Here's what I mean by that, and this is kind of tricky. In every season of life, and each season of life, I should say, each season of life is a new season that requires a different set of skills. not Liam Neeson kind of skills, different kind of skills. Okay, each season of life is a new season that requires a different set of skills. And here's what I mean by that. In high school, if you're a high school guy, certain set of skills. You had 3 options. You could be smart, you could be an athlete, or you could play the guitar. But you had to have one of those 3 skill levels, right? If you're a high school guy. In college, different set of skills. Single, new job, new, post-grad, different set of skills. Every season of life, it requires a little bit of different set of skills in order to be successful. Single, dating, married with kids, maybe single again, dating again. Every season of life requires a little, and the thing is, it's true of all of us, every time we move into a new season, we've never been there before, which means we really don't know what we're doing. And by the time we figure it out, we've moved into another season of life. And the problem is the mistakes we make in one season, we take into the next season. We all know this. So what I mean by this rule for the road is simply this. Determine right now in this season, determine what you want your life to look like in this season. Determine what you want your life to look like in this season, and then here's the trick. Find someone who is a little bit further ahead that has successfully navigated this season and ask them for their map. In other words, how did you get from where I am now to where you are now? Because I want to end up to some degree, I don't want to marry your wife or anything, but I'm just saying I want to get to that season of life successfully. And you navigated college, you navigated graduate school, you navigated new to a city, single for 8, 9, 10, however many years. You navigated being a single mom. You navigated dropping back into the dating scene again. Find somebody who has navigated the season of life you are in now and ask them for your map. Now, you say, well, that sounds complicated and I don't know anybody. I'll talk about that in just a minute. I'm telling you, this is one of the smartest, most common sense, wisest things that I ever did. My whole life, and somebody taught me this early in life, find somebody who is where you want to be and ask them how they got there. Find somebody who is where you want to be, ask them how they got there. And all of you can do this, and I'll tell you the trick. Here's the trick. First of all, never ever ask anyone to mentor you. Never do that. Never, because a mentor sounds like a homework assignment. It's like, no, I don't have time for that. Here's the trick, and don't tell anybody I told you this. What you need to do when you discover someone, and I'm gonna give you some ideas about how in a minute. When you find someone, or you notice somebody at work, somebody at church, somebody in the gym, somebody in your community, and you're like, you know what? That they got through this season and they got to that season, and I like where they ended up. I want to see their map. Here's the trick. You email them, or you text them, or you talk to them, depending on the nature of the relationship, and you say this: hey, if I bought you coffee, or if I bought you breakfast, I bought you lunch, I'd just like to ask you 3 questions. Hey, if I bought you coffee, if I bought you breakfast, hey, I'm not trying to be your best friend, but I just have 3 questions that I know you have the answer to. Would you just meet with me just one time and just answer 3 questions? Most people will say yes. You say, Andy, what are the 3 questions? I don't know. You got to come up. I don't know what 3 questions are. But here's what you don't say. You don't say, hey, can I ask you some questions? That's like, no, you cannot ask me. No, it's like, I've thought it through. There's just 3 things. I've watched you. I'm convinced you have the answer to these 3 things. I just want to meet one time. Will you answer my 3 questions? I'm telling you, most people will give you that much time. And what you learn when you have 3 carefully crafted questions about how do I navigate now to get to where I want to be, I'm telling you, you will learn so much from so many people. And then sometimes at the end of the coffee, or you're paying, then you say, hey, would it be okay if in the future sometime I reached out and if I had some more questions? And most of them will say yes. And you just got yourself a mentor, but don't tell them, it will scare them off, okay? But I'm telling you, at every season of life, I've been so fortunate to just look ahead. When Sandra and I got married, older couple. Before we had kids, people with kids. When I was, single, I got married when I was 30. So just navigating all those years, finding people who are just a little bit ahead and asking them just 2 or 3 questions. You should find somebody who is where you want to be and get a copy of their map. Now, if you're a part of one of our local churches, we have so many ways for you to do this. If you're dating someone seriously, we have this 2-to-1 program where you sit down with a couple who's married and they'll answer all your questions, and it's just absolutely amazing. And if you're in a serious relationship moving toward marriage, you're crazy not to take advantage of this. We have Starting Point. Most of you know about Starting Point. Some people who are a little bit older in their faith can answer questions for you about faith and navigating the faith journey. One of the best ways in our network of churches to meet some people who are where you might want to be is in family ministry. Because our family ministry is where we take care of, kids in middle school and high school, and we have people of all ages and all stages of life, and some of the best relationships come out of serving together, and it's like, oh my gosh, they're so cool, or oh my gosh, what a great couple, or wow, she's a single mom who just seems to be knocking it out of the park. Hey, could we have coffee? I find myself in a position I never thought I would be in. Could we have coffee? I just want to ask you 3 questions. What are the questions? I don't know, Andy didn't tell me. Anyway, you have to come up with the questions. But to get in an environment where you're serving along other people in different seasons of life is a fabulous way, all kinds of things. Because, and I know you know this, but again, common sense, wisdom is not having all the answers. Wisdom is knowing what you don't know and having the humility to ask someone who does. That's what wisdom is. Wisdom isn't, I'm so wise, I know everything. Wisdom is, I'm so wise, I know what I don't know. And instead of trying to figure it out, because, hey, learning things the hard way is hard, and life is a brutal teacher in some arenas, right? So wisdom is, I know what I don't know. I'm not gonna be too proud to ask, and I'm not knocking your friends, your peers, the people who are in the same season of life that you're in, they don't know any more than you do. So you're just kind of sharing a little bit of your ignorance, but to find someone who is where you wanna be and to get their map. That is the wise thing to do. 4th one, don't carry any unnecessary baggage. Rule for the road number 4, don't carry any unnecessary baggage. Don't raise your hand. Do you have baggage? I know you do. Because after 18, we all have some, right? We just all do. We've all been hurt. We've all been betrayed. We've all been, in some cases, abandoned. We've all been through a relationship where we just had a picture of what the relationship was, and suddenly one day, one afternoon, one night, one text, one email, one conversation with a friend, we realized it wasn't what we thought it was. Some of you had to parent your parents. Some of you had to parent a parent. Some of you are the older brother, the older sister, and you kind of had to raise your brothers and sisters because your mom or your dad, they just weren't there. So we all come into adulthood with some baggage. We don't need to be ashamed of that. But we certainly don't need to carry it any longer than necessary. Because baggage leaves us kind of eaten up on the inside, right? And it leaves us insecure. It always leaves us insecure. Even though on the outside we look so secure. It always leaves us a little angry because we're out of balance. A few months ago, I was listening to the Tim Ferriss podcast. I think it's called the Tim Ferriss Show. And he was interviewing Amanda Palmer, who's an artist you may or may not be familiar with. And Amanda was telling this long, drawn-out story. It was very interesting about a friend of hers, and didn't get her friend's name, and I don't think he's anybody famous, but in her conversation with him, he made a statement that I hit pause and stopped and wrote down, and I just think this statement, this quote is so powerful. And here's what he said to Amanda at some point. He said this: if you don't deal with your demons, they go into the cellar of your soul and lift weights. Woo! When I first heard this, I'll be honest, my first thought was, I wish I'd come up with that. That is so good. Now I'm gonna have to give credit, which I always do. If you don't deal with your demons, this is so true. If you don't deal with your demons, they go into the cellar of your soul and they lift weights. In other words, if you don't deal with them, it doesn't get better. They get bigger and you get bitter. And you and I carry baggage that we don't need to carry from one season to the next, one relationship to the next. The Apostle Paul, who stepped onto the pages of history as somebody who hated Christians. So if you hate Christians, he's your guy, okay? Hated Christians, arrested them, and then he becomes a Jesus follower. Writes letters to first century Christians. And in one of these letters, he gives us his version of that quote. And here's what he wrote. And if you grew up in church, you've heard this 1,000 times. In fact, if you grew up in Sunday school, you may have memorized this statement at some point. Here's what he said. He says, okay, let's be realistic. You're gonna get angry. You're gonna be angry. You're gonna be angry because you're gonna get hurt. You're gonna be angry because you're gonna be betrayed. You're gonna be angry because somebody you trusted walked away. You're gonna be angry because, well, life is life. Be angry. There's a time and a season for that. But don't sin. In other words, don't allow your anger to drive your behavior. Don't let anger be the boss of you. So what do we do, Paul? He says, well, let me tell you, be angry, but don't sin, and put a time limit on it. Don't let it just go on and on and on from season to season and relationship to relationship. Don't be angry, but don't sin, and don't let the sun go down while you're still angry. And this was a common saying in the first century. And it wasn't literal. It's not like, hey, you got to deal with this before the sun goes down. It's like, yeah, well, what if the sun was already down? Do I get like 24 hours? So it's not literal. He's saying, you know what he's saying? He's saying what we kind of already know. Don't just let it go on and on and on. You've got to deal with this. You've got to cap this. You've got to stop this. Don't let the sun go down while you're still angry, and don't give, and he uses kind of the same terminology as the quote, and don't give the devil space. Don't give the devil a foothold. Don't give the devil a toehold, because if you do you know what he's gonna do? He's gonna go down in the cellar of your soul and build a gym, and he's gonna deck it out. And if you don't deal with your demons, they're gonna move in and they're just gonna lift weights in the cellar of your soul. You're like, Andy, are we talking about literal demons and literal devil? You know what? In terms of this principle, it doesn't matter what you believe about that. Because you know intuitively, instinctively, there is something happening here that all of us have experienced from some time. And the Apostle Paul said, yes, there is an evil force. And if you don't deal with your baggage, and if you don't deal with, to use his term, if you don't deal with the circumstance and the people in the circumstance that created the angst and the anger and the frustration in you, he says that over time, you know this, it's just gonna eat away at your soul. So let me ask it a different way. You got any demons down there lifting weights? If you're not sure, ask around. The people closest to you know the answer to this. And if you ask them, and when you ask them, they step back before they answer, you know the answer, right? Jeff Henderson, one of our staff, our pastor up at Gwinnett Church, has this great statement. He says, if you really wanna know, sit down with someone close to you and ask this question. What's it like to be on the other side of me? What's it like to be on the other side of me? Because here's the tragedy of carrying around too much baggage. The people that suffer the most are the people we love the most. The people that suffer the most are your roommates. The people you suffer the most are the people you say you're in love with. The people that suffer the most are the kids you're raising. The people that suffer the most are the people who are trying to get closest to us. So this doesn't, the irony is this doesn't hurt the people that hurt us. It hurts us. And it hurts the people that have nothing to do with the people who've hurt us. So Paul's point is deal with this as soon as possible. Don't carry any of this any longer than necessary. Don't carry it season to season. Don't carry it relationship to relationship. Again, the only person that gets hurt, you know this, is you. Then he goes on. This seems so unrealistic. He says, come on, get rid of it. Don't let the sun, don't let the seasons change. Don't carry it relation. Don't keep telling the same sad story and everybody goes, oh man, that's horrible. No wonder no wonder he's, right? Come on, let's land that plane. Get rid of. He makes it sound so easy, doesn't he? Get rid of all bitterness. And the idea is pick it up, take it to the street and leave it. Pick it up, take it to the street and bag it and leave it. Get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, along with every form of malice. And I know, I've been doing this a long time. When I stand up here and say something like that, you're thinking, okay, well, Andy, yeah, well, like, so your mama hurt your feelings one time and you were bitter and you done. If you heard my story, you might be thinking, if you heard my story, you may give me a pass. You may say, you know what? Your story is so bad. You sit over here in the past section. You do not have to get rid of your anger and bitterness. You hang on to it. You need to hang on to that, because if you don't hang on to it, you're going to be like letting them off. So you get a pass, but all the rest of us. And when you understand the Apostle Paul's life and what he had been through, he means what he's saying. And he means what he's saying because he cares about his audience, because he knows what we know, that it doesn't even hurt. Carrying the anger doesn't hurt the people who hurt us. It just hurts us. And then it hurts the people. that we love. So the question is this even possible? Is it possible? Is it really possible? Well, it must be. And in just a minute, I'm gonna make a suggestion about an exercise you can work through to do this. But then next, Paul connects what he's saying to Jesus. Now, if you're not a Christian or not a Jesus follower or not a church person and somebody paid you to be here, somebody bribed you to watch this, I get that. Here's what I would say to you as we move to this next section. Regardless of what you believe about God, regardless of what you believe about Jesus or the Bible or any of that, I would just say to you, figure out a way to get rid of your bitterness. Because the demons in the cellar of your soul are just lifting weights. And I know, I'm just gonna give you the benefit of the doubt. I know your anger is justified. And I'm gonna assume your bitterness is justified. And I'm gonna assume that if you got up here and told your story, we would be like, well, no wonder. But for your sake, and for the sake of the people that you love, would you figure out a way to get rid of it? So here's what Paul says next. He says, if you're a Christian, this isn't just advice. You have to do this. Because if you're a Christian, there's way more at stake than simply you. He says, be kind and compassionate to one another. Why? Because treating people well is our brand. Treating people with kindness is our brand. Treating people with kindness and compassion isn't extra credit. Treating people with kindness and compassion is our brand because Jesus said, the way people are gonna know that you're my follower is what you do at 11 o'clock on Sunday morning. No. The way people are gonna know that you're my follower is by how well you treat other people. So anything that keeps you from treating people well is in the way of following Jesus. So the bitterness you carry around and the resentment you carry around and the story that justifies your bitterness and your anger, this isn't just a, hey, so you'll live a happier life and your relationships will be better. This is in the way of your ability and my ability to follow Jesus because our baggage interferes with our brand. And I know that from personal experience. Unresolved hurt, unresolved abandonment, unresolved whatever it might be, always gets in the way of love. So why not get rid of it? And now he tells us how. Forgiving each other. Easy for me to say standing up here, I know. Easy for me, but important for all of us. And this is why the next line is so crucial. This is why the next line was probably difficult for the Apostle Paul to ever get his mind and heart around. Forgiving each other just as in Christ, God forgave you. And this is the thing that separates those of you following Jesus from those of you who maybe at this point in your life are not following Jesus. We as Christians do not forgive people because they deserve to be forgiven. They don't. We forgive because we are forgiven. We cancel other people's debts, even the people that have racked up a lot of debt. We cancel other people's debts because our debts have been canceled. Because the way to understand this is the hurt from your past and my past, the abuse from your past and my past, the betrayal, it creates baggage. It creates baggage because what it does, it essentially opens an account. Because the person that hurt you the most and the person that betrayed you the deepest, those people essentially took something from you, which means what? It means they owe you. What do they owe you? Perhaps they owe you your entire childhood. Perhaps they owe you that first marriage. Maybe they owe you the opportunity to tuck your kids into bed at night. Maybe they owe you money. Maybe they owe you your reputation. Maybe they owe you a career because you made a big career decision because of a promise they made to you, and then they broke their promise, and you can't go back and restart that career. You can't go back to that city and take that job. They took something from you, which means they owe you, which means the account that you have opened stands open. The account is open and you are waiting to be paid back, and that's what creates the baggage. The waiting, the open account, the hoping, the longing, the injustice. But here's the good news and the bad news. The good news and the bad news is this: it's never gonna happen. That's good news because you can close the account. It's bad news because you wish the account would stay open long enough for them to close the account for you by paying back what they owe you. But come on, let's just be honest, we're adults. They can't pay you back. They couldn't even if they wanted to. They can't return the past. They can't restore that marriage. They can't give you that time back with your kids. They can't restore your reputation. So how foolish of us, even though it's completely understandable, how foolish of us to keep an open account with somebody waiting to be paid back when they're not gonna pay us back and they couldn't pay us back. And all the time we wait, our demons are lifting weights, moving with us from season to season, relationship to relationship. The way that we get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, along with every form of malice, is by closing the account, by deciding, do you know what? I'm gonna do precisely what they don't deserve for me to do. I am going to forgive them, because forgiveness is a decision. But more specifically, and this may help you, forgiveness is a decision to cancel a debt. Forgiveness is a decision where you decide, you know what? You don't owe me anymore. Why would I keep this account open when you couldn't pay me back, even if you showed up at my doorstep tomorrow? Even if you called and wanted to make it right, you can't pay me back. So why in the world would I hold this open account that just creates baggage for me, that sets me up for failure season after season, relationship after relationship? The way that you move ahead is by closing the account. And to close the account requires three things that I want to give you real quick. If you have your phone, you may want to take a picture of this next screen. For some of you, I know the story. The story goes like this for you. Well, I tried to forgive. I've heard this all my life as a pastor. I've heard this so many times as a leader. I've tried to forgive. I tried to forgive. I tried to forgive. And I understand that. And when you say I tried to forgive, what you're saying is this. I prayed, I made a decision, but I just can't seem to forgive. Maybe. This is the first time you'll ever understand what forgiveness really is, because maybe this is the first time anyone ever explained it to you as a debt that has to be canceled. So here's how this works. The first step, there's three things. The first one's real easy. The first one is identify who. You've already done that, right? Identify who. Who took from you? Who took from you? And then number two, this is the part that everybody skips, and this is where people get hung up with canceling debt and with closing those accounts. You have to determine what was taken from you. As long as you are trying to forgive generally, you will never have specific freedom. As long as you're trying to just forgive generally, you will never have the freedom you're looking for. So the second part of this is so critical, and this is the part most people skip. You need to sit down and you need to write down exactly what they took from you. Make a list. They took your dignity. He took my time. She took my 20s. He took my opportunity for education. She took my opportunity to go to grad school. He took this, they took my, what is it? You just need to make a list, because you have an open account and they actually owe you and they actually can't pay you back, but you can't cancel the debt until you know exactly what's been taken. And for some people, this is a very, very painful exercise, but for some people, this one step is the key to being free to move on. And then third, you declare it canceled. You declare it canceled. Here's my list. And God, I have written down what they have taken from me, and they can't give it back anyway, so why hang on to this? Even if they showed up tomorrow, they can't give back to me what they've taken from me. And so I'm deciding, because I'm in control of this decision, I'm deciding to say, you don't owe me anymore. And when those old feelings rise up and when those emotions swell up, you stop and say, no, that's an old debt. It's been canceled. When you start to have, this was my struggle, when you start to have those imaginary conversations with the people who've hurt you, you ever do that? You're driving, all of a sudden, next thing you know, you don't even know how it started. You're driving and you're having an imaginary conversation with the person that hurt you. And the fun part about the imaginary conversations is you always have the right thing to say, right? In my imaginary conversations, there's a crowd and it's happening out loud and they're going, ooh. Oh, that's a good one, Andy. Oh, I'm like Jesus and the Pharisees, just drop the mic every single time, make them look foolish. So when you start those, and I'm telling you, my story, it's not that all different than some of yours in terms of some of that. And I just found myself, wait, there I go again. I'm having an imaginary conversation as if that account is still open. That account is closed. For me, I had to start saying it out loud. No, account is closed. No. I've canceled that debt. No, I'm going to think about, I have canceled that debt. And the way I would say it is, no, they don't owe me. They don't owe me. They don't owe me. I'm keeping it out here. They don't owe me anymore. And over time, do you know what happens? Our emotions begin to catch up with the reality of the decision that we made. Now, because I know how some of us are thinking, this is not about fairness, okay? Forgiveness is not fair. In most cases, justice and fairness are out of reach. This is about freedom. Freedom from the control of those who hurt you, that you continue to allow to hurt you because you won't close the account. So if this strikes a chord with you, those first three, rules for the road, they're kind of common sense. You may have some work to do there, but I'm telling you, to travel with unnecessary baggage is to ensure that your future will never be as bright as it could be. To travel with unnecessary baggage guarantees that your future relationships will be more complicated than they need to be. So would you get alone? And would you identify who? Would you determine what? And then would you declare it canceled? And don't carry any unnecessary baggage. Cancel those debts, close those accounts, and keep them closed. And tell your demons, along with closing those accounts, I'm closing the gym. I'm closing the whole thing. You are not the boss of me. You do not control me. Those counts are closed and those debts are canceled. Leave me alone. And over time, those voices and those conversations will grow weaker and weaker. And one day, you'll recognize and realize they're gone for good, and you will be free. You will be free to become the person that God created you ultimately to be. Now, the way we wanted to close, and this was my bad idea, so blame me. I want to close with a good old-fashioned altar call, okay? Some of you, if you're Methodist, it's like, we don't do that. Well, this may be you're not, and here's what we're gonna do. I asked the Canopy group to print these little cards, and on one side it has blank, on the other side it says canceled. And we're gonna close with a song. The band's gonna come out, they can come on out. And during the song, if as I was talking, it's like, oh man, I need to do that. Here's what I don't want you to do. I don't want you to leave and you run around with some friends and it kind of dissipates, and next thing you know, you're back into the same routine. I want some of you to make a decision tonight publicly, not for us. We're not gonna have you sign up for something and raise hands and heads bowed and eyes closed, and if you meant it, raise your hand. If you really meant it, right, we're not doing that. This isn't for us. This is for you. And you know what? This is such a big deal for some of us, and I've been there, I understand this, that you need a physical reminder that you made a decision tonight. By golly, I am closing that account. I am canceling those debts. I am closing that account. I am canceling those debts. I am so sick and tired of them ruining and running my emotion. I'm so tired of them being in my head. I'm shutting down the gym. I am canceling those debts. I'm closing the account. We just want you to come down during the song and pick up one of these cards as a reminder to you that tonight was the first step. And if you want to use this card to make your list, some of you need to make a list and burn it. Some of you may need to make a list and put it on a bulletin board somewhere just to remember, oh, no. Not going back there, canceled. But we want tonight to be a significant step forward as we get rid of our unnecessary baggage so that our journey through life will be unencumbered by the unnecessary past, so that your past can remind you, but no longer define you. Let me pray for us. Then you respond as you feel led the next few minutes. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for the freedom that we've been invited into. Father, for the person here tonight, they're not really religious and they were invited by a friend and they're not so sure about the God part. Would you just give them wisdom, just maybe a breakthrough moment tonight to figure out how to get rid of the stuff they're carrying? Father, for those of us who are your followers, wow, it just gets in the way of us loving people. So just give us the wisdom to know what to do. Give us the courage to do it. And Father, for the men tonight, because I get this, whose pride is gonna keep them from making this step forward, because I'll do it at home and it's not a big deal, but they need this for them. Just give them the courage to do what needs to be done. In Jesus' name, amen.